So welcome back, everybody. This is Paul again, making another one of my little videos here for YouTube. And as I've done in a lot of other segments here, I talk a lot about perception. And the reason I do that is because our perception is basically all we have. We just say, well, I am so-and-so or whatever, and we perceive things. We make judgments about what's going on based upon our experience and the things we've learned and so on over the years. And because of that, we all have different perceptions of different kinds, and we often get into disputes as human beings about what's real. And if you read history and go back into some of the really ancient texts, you hear that, well, some people apparently perceive some very strange things. And as I've mentioned in some of the other videos, that the human being, just the fact that we here, it doesn't matter how poor we might be or rich or whatever, wherever we live, whatever our body is, we have some mechanism, we have a brain, feelings, and that all that chemistry and so on that we all have it. It has a lot of features and a lot of abilities that we're not really taught generally when we're growing up. And a lot of cultures in the past have talked to people and taught the civilization about meditation, about how to have a very different conscious experience than the so-called normal, I should say. Because there really isn't any particular normal about human awareness. There's such a vast range of different kinds of perceptions that we all have. So what I hope to do in my videos is try to help people understand, look, first of all, we can take responsibility for our own understanding about everything in life. And we don't have to be ignorant or confused about a lot of things, because in addition to all the outside perception that we have and the limits of our physical senses, there's also a deeper part of awareness in our being that we can explore and harness and really just become. And one of the things that's so difficult to try to explain, a lot of teachers that I've listened to and so on, they say it's just incredibly really simple, because like the Buddha said, supposedly, that if you able to stop this clutching attachment of the mind, of thinking, the identification that we have, for 15 seconds or a minute or whatever, you could just enter a place where you realize, there's just people call it all kinds of things. There's enlightenment, realization, whatever, but it's more of a process of ascending out of a confused state and limited perceptions by having, just like in a helicopter, you go up a little higher, you see a little more, you see a little more, you see a little more, and you understand more, and it gets really clear. So I'm going to keep talking about perception more and more, and just say, look, there's different ways. There's, if I say something that everybody knows, okay, fine. It's always good to hear something. Hey, thank you for reminding me. I know, this is old knowledge. This is old history. For a long time, human beings have been dealing with the mind and perception and all that. And the exercises that many teachers have given over the centuries and thousands of years, they still apply. And a lot of people, it's not about a religion. See, the thing about religion is that it's just become like such a belief system and so many confused concepts. Forget all, if you put all that to the side for a second, look, well, whatever, we just got this little brain here, we got this consciousness, we got some kind of a sense of beingness here. But what happens is we clutch on to things. Just human nature, we say, oh, I'm this, and that. And, as long as we identify with something, it hampers and limits our ability to perceive anything beyond that. So the process of getting relaxed and simple is not that difficult. It really isn't, because if you just say leave a bowl of water there for a while and not bother it, and then you come back and it's just completely still. It's just like, in our mind, our awareness, the flickering awareness, the chatter, all that stuff that people know about. If anyone is interested in meditation, they talk about the chattering mind and all that stuff. It's just nothing really. It's just bubbles on the top of a surface of an ocean or something, because underneath there's a part of our awareness that is constant and continuous and goes through the sleep. It's 24 hours conscious. Now, a lot of psychologists will call that, well, that's the unconscious or whatever. But what I call unconscious is our daily awareness. That's the unconscious part, because the truth is there's a conscious part of us that is recording and watching and observing it. You notice how fast people's reactions are sometimes, just, like your eyes will blink suddenly, and there's an awareness that's already going on. It's like seeing down the road 100 feet, it's just way down there as far as it perceives. Now, what we need to do as far as expanding our awareness is try to tap into that, because as I was saying earlier, if we attach ourselves to sight, and we think, well, perception is sight, then that's a limitation. If we only think that perception is sound, then that's a limitation. Because each of these senses has a limitation. But if we consider perception as being something more deeper than that includes the sight and sound and all of those kind of senses, but deep down there's the perceiving something. You don't even have to put a name. It doesn't, if we really start to think about it, like the perception, if we just had amnesia any minute and just suddenly we forgot our name and everything, we'd still be perceiving something, and we just have a different label. We might even switch personalities and just identify with something entirely different. But underlying the awareness, the part of us that says, I am, it's just words. It's sort of like a saying of, I'm breathing. I don't even need to put a name on it. You could say I am and put a, fill in the blank. And some people have a long, long blank that they fill in. I am whatever, King Thutmose the 29th or whatever. But we have to, in order to expand our awareness, we have to let all that settle down. Just think, okay, and it's really not that difficult. It's just like, the simple exercise that anyone can do, and they're really just basic common sense. Because when we sit and just let it, like, if our physical senses are somewhat subdued, close your eyes, sit in a quiet place, be comfortable so that your body's not in pain. Just come to rest like a bird, you're just tired of flying, you just come down and rest. Because it's just like the part of our awareness that is very, very active and chattering. You think about an analogy with a little toddler, just going, running around the room. Eventually they get tired. And finally go, oh yeah, now I'd love to take a nap. I'm happy to take a nap because I'm tired. The same way with our awareness, our mind. It's just at some point in our human life, maybe it's a tragedy or some confusion or big chaos or something, the mind just is like overloaded or whatever and stressed out. Well, that's the time to just do that really simple thing and let all the water just come to rest. It's doing nothing at all. And we're not used to doing nothing. We're used to doing something. You got to do something, but we got to be. Before we can do anything, we have to be. Now, I fly a little airplane, and I learned in aviation. A plane will sit there a long time and just sit there still. Nobody's doing anything. It's just completely stopped. But when it goes fast, and that's the way we are. We have to completely full stop in our life. And when it's time to fly, we fly. Now, I want to keep talking about more and more techniques, and just kind of anything I say would just maybe trigger something that you already know, that anybody listening already knows. It's just like old knowledge, really. It's just reminding, oh yeah, I forgot that. Because, as I've said, what we identify with, we can just sit, and when we're quiet, when we're asleep, we're not really identifying with much. We might slip out of our body and just become like gas or air flowing or whatever. There's a part of our being that there's more to our being than just our identity, what we call ourselves, our career, our bodies. There's a formless presence in there within us that is us. It's not like there's a higher self and a lower self. In a way, we have to stop getting away from that kind of thinking, because, what is the higher self? No, we are the higher self. In our real identity, in our real self, we are the higher self. We are that enlightened self. We're the rider on the horse. And the body has its limitations, and the mind has limitations, and all those other parts of our existence are the horse that we're riding. That's the unconscious self. That's the shadow of the self. In other words, for example, the sun, the brilliant sun casts a shadow. In the same way, that immense, formless beingness that's within us, that gives us and allows us awareness, there's really no label you can really put on it, although people try very hard. But do we want a label on something that's really completely vast and infinite? Because, as I said, we go inside, we just relax, and if you just sit for a while, sometimes quietly, and just let yourself feel your awareness, just like a hand inside a silk glove. Our being is so gently connected to this body. It's gently connected to this body with the nerves and all that. And that's why purifying the body and taking care of it and keeping it in balance is tremendously helpful in letting us become more conscious of what's more than our body. And another analogy I use often is that, let's say you have a sponge, and you put the sponge in water. There's the form of the sponge, and then there's the water that's in the sponge. The water, like our body, life is just like that water. Our body's like that sponge. There's some living energy, life force connected to everything outside, connected, because we think that we're just this body, but there's just like air. There's almost like on the atomic level, there's really just vibration. It's just so in truth, this is not like a fantasy. This is just absolutely a fact of science, that the limits of the extent of our own awareness and our existence is not just the physical forms. We have dreams, we have visions, we have sensations, we have feeling of pressures and energy. You can feel the warmth in your body. You can feel subtle things. And there's a mechanism in our system that yogis and so on have talked about for thousands of years. It's been explored. It's nothing new. But getting there has been conceived as being extremely difficult. When actually children go there. Children are born in that state, you might say. And sometimes when they get old, people just they just stop, all their identity just dissolves away, and there's still awareness there. So, again, our perception is really, really important, what we perceive. Now, to begin with, we have to get ourselves in a perceiving mode where we're using the whole part of our being to perceive, all inside awareness and all the external senses as necessary. But as we discover over time, we realize that the internal awareness is far bigger. It extends outward. Because form and physical activities is just only one part of our living. It's only one part of the whole cosmos, really. And I encourage people to understand that it's not very difficult to just relax. And we're in a crisis mode in a way in the world, because there's so much chaos and so much confusion. And if people could harness that inner self and just go, okay, I'm just going to rest here and I'm going to let myself perceive more, because if I perceive more, then I'm going to understand more and I'm going to have more clarity and I won't be so upset. When people understand more, they have a common understanding and they have less arguing, because there's understanding. And that's another reason we should increase our perception, so that we get clear about things. And part of being clear is to not have reaction to what we perceive. That was one thing that I learned in one book called the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And it talks about just not a state of consciousness, or just non-reactive, non-judgmental, without judicious reading, just perception in the most fundamental and direct sense that you just understand by perceiving by directly. Because, again, you might see what's outside and then have the reaction inside. When someone doesn't react to what's outside, they understand the whole picture. For example, we need to perceive things more in terms of energy. For example, if you look at a car, you can say, well, there's a form there, there's a metal there, and there's rubber there, and all these different parts of the car. And that's it. You can think that way. But then if you get a little deeper, you realize, well, there's a battery there, and there's like a little engine in there, and there's heat in there, and there's water in there, and there's electrical circuits in there. And then it can start up, and it can move, and can do all these different things. Go backwards and forwards. It might have all kinds of devices inside. And our system is like that too. We can perceive another human being as just being an object or a shape or whatever. We judge them for whatever reason. But we're not perceiving the whole being. We have to look at each other as human beings and animals and so on and see what's really going on there. For example, like if you have someone who's really angry, most likely there's some really crazy sadness that they have in their life. Just like they're just completely like in a box and they just sad. Most of the time, a lot of times the anger is coming from sadness. And you can perceive somebody and you can have all kinds of judgments about them, but you might not realize, well, maybe they're just tired, or maybe their mother just died, or maybe they just had a fight with somebody, or maybe they're in really bad health, and maybe they're just got a doctor just told them they're about to die tomorrow. I mean, we can't look at each other and have a reaction like that. Non-reactive understanding is a key to just tremendous openness of perception, because just open the door. Because sometimes if you're in a closed room, you just have to open the door a tiny bit to let in a bit of light. And the same way with if we increase our level of perception just a little bit in increments, and then if we get to realize, well, my goodness, now we're perceiving so much more. And I'm going to talk again more and more about perception, because there's ways that we as human beings can enhance our perception. There's just so many ways, but it starts with, again, being reflective. I read this story one time about a lens that they made, a telescope lens, and it took them 11 years. They were just like perfecting the mirror, perfectly computerizing. It was before today's modern computers, but they just had to get this mirror perfect so they could look and not have distortion. And it's the same way with our own perception. A reflective state of mind, a non-judgmental perceiving mode, is going to give us the most accurate perceptions. Listening without a judgment, because you can listen to any kind of stuff. There's no problem. I listen to all kinds of crazy stuff, including on the television news. That's the craziest part there. But I don't have to take it all in. I don't have to make it part of my understanding. I mean, my reality. I just hear it. If it makes sense, if it comes, if it has some real value that I can verify, then it's useful information. So, again, being open, being still, being quiet. And I think it's very, very important. I make a lot of videos about all kinds of crazy stuff out in the world there, the technology, the politics, and all that crazy stuff that's going on. But essentially, that's just a bunch of excess stuff. We talk about, and I'm worried about the future of the planet because I got kids and grandkids. I don't want them to have a weird life and be in a tyranny for the rest of their life or whatever. But ultimately, it comes down to just being us as a human being. We're just sitting here enjoying existence. What's the conflict? Who are we going to fight with? There's really no conflict in this life unless we make one. And everybody has the limits of their understanding. I mean, there's people out there, sure, they're juvenile, whatever. I've gotten called names on YouTube or whatever. I know I'm not whatever they call me. It doesn't matter what they call, because I have an awareness of myself as something far different than that. So people have all kinds of options in this world. We can all perceive anything we want. We can believe anything we want. But if we put aside all that stuff, all the concepts, and use our perception, our inner wisdom, to sort things out, we need to take advantage of that inner guiding being. You call it the higher self. That's our real self. That's who we really are, is a beingness. Just, it doesn't have to have a name. When we're born, we don't have a name. As soon as a kid comes, like, hey, we got to get a name on that baby. Like get that book out, get the name on it. Then you got to slap a religion on there. But ultimately, we're not that. All the sages, all the people have taught, like for thousands of years, we're not all those things. We're not those labels. We're not a religion. We're not like a race. We're not a whatever. We're just beingness. We have a body. We use the body. We're just in here in this planet to learn something, grow personally. We all have our stages. We can't go look at somebody else and say, well, you should be in a different stage. I mean, what's wrong with you? We can't do that. I mean, it's like going out to your garden in the early spring and saying, well, what's the matter with you? You're not fully grown yet. Well, there's a lot of human beings on this planet. Look, we're all born here, and we have a chance to be of service and do blissful things and get blissful. And, no matter where you are, being kind to other beings and being joyful and gratitude, it's just like the elevator, it goes right up the elevator. You get the gratitude in there, and you just be still, and you go, okay, now every minute I'm sitting there like that, and that feeling and that gratitude and that stillness, it's like being in the elevator, going up as fast as it can go. And our awareness has many different levels. It's not like a discrete thing where, you're stuck here and you're on that level or that plane or whatever. It's not like that. I don't really believe that at all. I just feel like there's some sort of a continuum of awareness that we have eyes that see from the red all the way to the blue and the violet. The same way with our ears. Our perceptions, our intuitions have ranges. And by more practice, we get more subtle, more ability to perceive and the feeling of the subtle things in life. Because our inner awareness already knows the answers that we need to know. And there's like a little division, you might say, like a membrane between, let's say, the left and right half of the brain, or between our subconscious and our conscious, or what I call our daily lives. We're not in touch with the superconscious part of ourself, which is all-seeing and all-present. And as we tap into that and relax and let that let that membrane dissolve, let that barrier dissolve between what we are conscious of and what we're unconscious of. So we become universally conscious, more conscious. There are yogis who have trained themselves, they don't really sleep. I mean, they might go into a state of samadhi and they're in a deep sleep, but they're still conscious. They're not, unconscious. So anyway, just my video here. I only got a couple minutes on the rest of this tape. I really appreciate everybody watching and the comments. I know a lot of people, only a few people watch at the moment, but that's fine, because ultimately it's just, if a few people understand and get help by something that I've learned, then great. That's fantastic, because I'm more than pleased. But it's been a lot more than just a few people. But still, you get those people out there that just have to argue with somebody on YouTube about what they say or how they look or whatever. But again, I watch a lot of other videos and I listen to other people's content, and I respect all the other people out there putting their 2 cents out there, because we need it. And I believe that we're now the real media out there. We gotta just harness it and talk to each other and get wise about some things, have some clarity, because the politicians here aren't doing it. They need a little bit meditation room down there in the halls of Congress. And so again, I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you in the next video.